June 18th, 1815, 5:17 a.m. The first pale light of a gray Belgian summer creeps over the ridge south of Waterloo. Rain is still falling, soft but relentless, turning the clay soil into glue. Somewhere in the half-darkness, a French infantry voltigeur of the 45th Regiment de Ligne shivers in his soaked greatcoat, stamps his feet, and peers toward the ridge. He doesn't know it yet, but in exactly 6 hours he will be dead. And the man who will kill him, directly or indirectly, is already awake, 35 kilometers south, in a small farmhouse bedroom that smells of damp plaster and candle smoke. 4 months earlier, 26 February 1815, 5:42 p.m. The brig Inconstant drops anchor in the Gulf Juan, its tricolor flapping defiantly against a violet Mediterranean sky. 784 men, grenadiers of the Old Guard with bearskins wrapped in canvas, Polish lancers in crimson chapkas, gunners, cooks, one Mamluk still wearing his turban, spill onto the narrow beach like black ants from an upturned nest. At their head strides a short, thick-set figure in a gray overcoat and bicorn hat turned fore and aft. His face is rounder than it was, the cheeks fuller, the eyes a colder gray. But the voice, God, that voice, hasn't changed. "Soldat!" Napoleon Bonaparte shouts, and the single word cuts through the surf like a saber. "If there is one among you who wishes to shoot his emperor, here I am." Silence, then a roar. 700 throats answer as one. They have crossed from Elba on nothing but faith and a single 12-pounder cannon hidden under tarpaulins. No blood has been shed yet, but it will be. You can almost taste the salt on the wind that evening, feel the pebbles crunching under nailed boots as the column forms up on the coastal road. Torches hiss in the mist. Someone starts singing Veillons au salut de l'Empire, off-key, defiant. By nightfall, they are marching north, toward the snow-capped mountains and toward Paris. The 100 days have begun. Cut to 17 June 1815, 11:47 p.m. The same man, now emperor again, N to his staff, Boney to his enemies, sits hunched over a map table in the last farmhouse before Waterloo, the Caillou. Rain hammers the tiled roof like musketry. Candlelight flickers across the pockmarked face that once made Europe tremble. He is 55 years old, overweight, suffering from hemorrhoids and possibly stomach cancer, but the mind is still lightning. Across the table, Marshal Soult, veteran of Austerlitz, now chief of staff, watches him warily. "Your Majesty, the ground tomorrow will be a swamp. Perhaps we should delay until—" Napoleon cuts him off with a glance sharp enough to draw blood. "Delay? Wellington is there. Blücher is wounded, but marching. We have them separated. Tomorrow we destroy the English army before the Prussians can intervene. Then we turn on Blücher and finish him. France will rise again." He taps the map with a compass, the metal point leaving tiny dents. His voice drops to that intimate, dangerous tone that once made grown marshals blush like ensigns. "I have come back from Elba. I have marched from Caen to Paris in 20 days without firing a shot. The soldiers love me. The people love me. God is bored with the English." Soult says nothing. Outside, the rain keeps falling. Somewhere, a horse screams in the darkness. And in that moment, in that cramped room lit by guttering candles, the fate of Europe is balanced on the edge of a single terrible certainty. Napoleon believes, truly believes, that one more victory will make everything right again. He's wrong. But dawn is still 6 hours away, and hope is a powerful drug. Midnight. The rain is no longer falling, it is attacking. Every French soldier between Quatre Bras and the little hamlet of Waterloo is soaked to the bone. Greatcoats weigh 20 pounds with water. Muskets are swaddled in blankets that do nothing. Cartwheels sink axle deep in mud. Horses strain until tendons snap. A gunner of the Guard artillery slips, falls face first into the mire, and simply lies there for a moment, too exhausted to curse. Up on the plateau, the Emperor finally sleeps, 3 hours at most, sprawled fully dressed on a camp bed, one arm dangling, snoring like a bourgeois after too much wine. In the next room, his valet marchand removes the mud-caked boots and whispers to the surgeon Larrey. He hasn't slept properly in a week. But Napoleon dreams of victory. He dreams of the ridge ahead, Mont Saint-Jean, empty of redcoats at dawn, Wellington caught napping, the road to Brussels open. He dreams the old dream. 2:11 a.m. A courier splashes into the courtyard of Les Cailloux, soaked in blood and rainwater. He has written from the Prussian rearguard. Blücher, old Marshal Vorwärts, is not finished. Wounded at Ligny 2 days ago, ribs cracked, half dead, the 72-year-old maniac has refused a carriage. He is coming on horseback, wrapped in a peasant's blanket, dosed with gin and rhubarb to keep the pain at bay. 45,000 Prussians are marching through the night, boots squelching, using compass bearings in pure hatred to find the battlefield. The courier collapses in the hallway. Soult reads the dispatch by candlelight and feels his stomach knot. He wakes Napoleon. The Emperor sits up slowly, eyes puffy, hair plastered to his forehead. For one heartbeat, he looks old. Then the mask slams back down. Blücher marches. Good. Let him come. We will use him to complete Wellington's ruin. Soult hesitates. Sire, the ground. The artillery cannot maneuver. The cavalry. Napoleon waves a hand as if brushing away a fly. At dawn the sun will dry the earth. You will see. There is no sun for another 5 hours. Only rain. Merciless, biblical rain. 4:30 a.m. Across the shallow valley on the opposite ridge, a Scottish piper of the 92nd Highlanders plays a mournful lament in the dark. The notes drift down through the downpour like lost souls. British sentries huddle under overturned wagons. Dutch-Belgian conscripts whimper. The Duke of Wellington, thin, hook-nosed, impossibly calm, rides the line in a blue cloak, speaking to each brigade in turn. Hold hard, lads. Wait for it. Wait for it. He knows the ground is a quagmire. He knows Blücher is coming. He knows he has perhaps 68,000 men, many of them raw, facing an army that has never truly been beaten in the open field. And yet he smiles, that cold, cutting smile, because the ridge is his, the reverse slope is his, and the mud, God damn it, the mud is his best ally tonight. 5:45 a.m. The rain finally eases to a drizzle. A watery, sour light begins to seep across the battlefield. From the bell tower of Waterloo Church, 4 miles north, you can just make out the two ridges, two low waves of earth separated by a gentle valley no wider than a musket shot in places. On the southern ridge, blue coats, white cross belts, eagles glinting dully. On the northern ridge, red, green, black, every color of the coalition. Waiting. Between them, a sodden chessboard of rye trampled into paste, orchards stripped bare by foraging parties, 3 lonely farmhouses that will soon become slaughterhouses. And overhead, the clouds refuse to part. The emperor steps out of Les Cailloux at first light, raises a spyglass, and sweeps the enemy ridge. He sees nothing but mist and the occasional flash of a lantern. He lowers the glass and mutters the words that will haunt France forever. They have entrusted the fate of Europe to an English general. What a mistake. Behind him, the old guard, bearded giants in towering bearskins, watch their emperor with absolute faith. They still believe he cannot lose. They are about to learn otherwise. And somewhere in the valley, the first cannonball of the day is already being rammed home. 11:30 a.m. The sun has finally broken through, weak and reluctant, like a debtor paying only half. Steam rises from thousands of blue coats. Muskets glint. The ground is still a bog, but the emperor has waited long enough. Napoleon stands on a small knoll behind Rossum farm, one hand tucked into his gray overcoat, the other holding a silver-mounted telescope. Around him, the beautiful, terrible machinery of the Grande Armée. 12 battalions of Guard infantry in reserve, 93 cannon already unlimbered, 15,000 cavalry horses pawing the earth like dragons impatient for the apocalypse. He lowers the telescope and turns to Soult. It begins. A single gun fires from the French Grand Battery on the forward slope. A heartbeat later, 74 more answer in a rolling, earth-shaking broadside that makes the air itself bleed. Across the valley, the first cannonballs strike the Allied line. You can picture it. A solid shot smashes through the 1st Battalion of the 95th Rifles in the sandpit below La Haye-Sainte. 1 second, a green-jacketed rifleman is reloading behind a bank of sandbags. The next, he is simply gone, erased, leaving only a red mist and a smoking boot. Another ball ricochets 3 times, each bounce higher, until it decapitates a Dutch-Belgian gunner and buries itself in the soft earth behind him. Wellington, watching from the elm tree crossroads, winces once, barely, and says to nobody in particular, "Damn the fellow, he's opened the ball early." 11:36 a.m. Prince Jérôme Bonaparte, Napoleon's youngest brother, reckless, charming, desperate to prove himself, receives the order to take the forward outpost of Hougoumont. He thinks it will be a skirmish. He is wrong. The first French wave, Baudouin's brigade, 4,000 men of Reilly's 2nd Corps, storms down the slope toward the walled chateau and its orchards. British guards of the Coldstream and 3rd Guards wait behind loopholes and garden walls, silent until the French are 30 yards away. Then, the first British volley. It is as if the wall itself explodes. Hundreds of blue-coated infantry drop at once, like puppets with cut strings. The orchard becomes a slaughter pen. A French officer later writes, "The musket balls came in sheets, like hail against a window." But the French keep coming. They reach the south gate, force it open with axes. Lieutenant Colonel MacDonell and a handful of guards hurl it shut again, barricading it with their own bodies while French soldiers on the other side try to climb over. A French grenadier named Legroski actually gets inside the courtyard, waving his musket, screaming victory, until Sergeant Ralph Fraser puts a ball through his mouth. By noon, the woods around Hougoumont are on fire. Men fight hand to hand among burning trees. The chapel is already roofless, the crucifix on the altar miraculously intact while the walls collapse around it. Napoleon intended Hougoumont as a diversion. It is becoming an obsession. 12:47 p.m. Back on the knoll, Napoleon suddenly sways in the saddle. His face goes gray, a stab of pain from the old ulcer, or worse. His staff pretend not to notice. He drinks a little brandy, straightens, and dictates the next order as if nothing happened. Now he will break the Allied center. He turns to the man who has been waiting for this moment his entire life. Marshal Michel Ney, red-haired, fearless, the bravest of the brave. Ney salutes, eyes blazing. Take La Haye Sainte at all costs, then the ridge is ours. He wheels his horse and gallops toward Darlan's First Corps. 20,000 bayonets already formed in columns so dense they look like moving forests. You can almost hear the drums, the terrible, relentless pas de charge, Roland, 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 rolling down the valley like thunder chasing lightning. The greatest infantry attack of the Napoleonic Wars is about to smash into Wellington's line. And somewhere on the Allied ridge, a young ensign of the 71st Highland Light Infantry turns to his sergeant and whispers, "Will we stand, Jamie?" The sergeant spits in the mud and answers, "We'll stand till we're told to lie down, lad, and then we'll lie down permanent." The French columns crest the rise. The valley disappears under a tide of blue.
1:45 p.m. The drums stop. For one impossible second, the battlefield holds its breath. Then 20,000 French bayonets surge forward in 24 massive columns, each battalion one behind the other, drums now replaced by the raw, animal roar of men who believe they are marching straight into legend. From the Allied ridge, it looks like a blue avalanche rolling uphill. Wellington sees it coming. He is everywhere at once, calm voice, clipped orders, the same phrase over and over. Wait, gentlemen, wait until you see the whites of their eyes. At 200 yards, the French guns cease fire, so they do not hit their own men. At 100 yards, the first Allied batteries open with canister, thousands of musket balls packed in tin cans that burst like giant shotguns. The leading ranks simply vanish. Men in the second and third ranks are killed by the bodies of their own comrades flying backward. Still they come. At La Haye Sainte Farm, in the center of the valley, the King's German Legion, riflemen in green, fighting for a king who abandoned them, load and fire with mechanical precision. Each rifle takes 15 seconds longer than a musket, but it kills at 300 yards instead of 50. The orchard in front of the farm becomes a carpet of blue cloth and scarlet blood. 2:05 p.m. The leftmost French division, Donzelot, smashes into the hedgerow held by the Dutch-Belgian brigade of Violent. The Belgians have already been under cannon fire for 2 hours. They break. Thousands throw down their muskets and run, exposing the crest of the ridge behind them. For one terrifying heartbeat, the Allied line has a hole big enough to drive a battalion through. Wellington sees it. He does not flinch. He simply turns in the saddle and says 2 words to the nearest aide. "Bring up Picton." Sir Thomas Picton, 57 years old, in a civilian frock coat and round hat because his luggage has gone missing, comes thundering forward. He is already dying, a musket ball from yesterday's skirmish lodged near his spine, but no one has told him. The French eagles appear on the ridge for the first time since Russia. 2:12 p.m. Picton stands in his stirrups and bellows in his thick Welsh accent, "Drive the scum off my ridge." The 28th Gloucestershire and the 79th Cameron Highlanders fire one volley, then charge downhill with the bayonet. The French column staggers. Picton is shot through the temple and falls dead without a sound. No one notices for 10 minutes. Hand to hand now. A French grenadier locks bayonets with a Highlander. They stare into each other's eyes at a distance of 6 inches while both try to pull the trigger. Neither musket fires, both soaked. The Highlander headbutts the Frenchman, breaks his nose, then drives the bayonet up under the ribs. 2:28 p.m. La Haye-Sainte is surrounded. The German garrison runs out of rifle ammunition. French sappers smash the north gate with axes. The last defenders are bayoneted in the courtyard. A tricolour is planted on the roof. Marshal Ney, hair wild, face black with powder smoke, sees the farm fall and believes the battle is won. He turns to his staff and screams the order that will haunt him forever. "Now, the cavalry, all the cavalry, we finish them." He thinks Napoleon has ordered it. He is wrong. But the bugles are already sounding. Across the valley, 5,000 cuirassiers of Milhaud's 4th Cavalry Corps, men in gleaming steel breastplates that can turn a musket ball at 100 yards, start walking their horses forward. Behind them come the carabineers, the red lancers of the guard, the glittering horsemen Napoleon calls the most beautiful cavalry in the world. They're going to charge uphill through mud ankle-deep on the horses into unbroken British infantry squares. And they are singing. You can almost hear it now, the thunder of 40,000 iron-shod hooves, the jingle of curb chains, the unearthly beauty of thousands of brass trumpets sounding the charge. Wellington looks left, sees the tidal wave of steel coming, and says the sentence every British schoolchild will one day memorize. "Stand up, guards!" The ridge bristles with bayonets as 70 British and German squares form in perfect clockwork. The first cuirassiers reached the crest, and the real killing begins.
4 p.m. The first wave of French heavy cavalry crests the ridge like a steel tsunami. 5,000 cuirassiers in burnished breastplates, black horsehair plumes whipping from their helmets, horses 17 hands high, animals bred for war and fed gunpowder in their oats. They come on at a controlled canter, because the mud will not allow more, yet the ground still trembles as though the ridge itself is afraid. Behind them, another 5,000, the red lancers of the guard, the carabineers in white and sky blue, the dragoons who have followed Napoleon from the Nile to the Niemen. Ney rides at their head, sword raised, red hair streaming like a comet. They have one order: break the squares. On the Allied side, the red-coated infantry do not cheer. They simply kneel, first rank, second rank, third rank, bayonets forming a hedgehog of steel around every regimental color. The squares look small, fragile, ridiculous against 10,000 horsemen. The first impact is apocalyptic. Cuirassiers slam into the 30th and 73rd Regiments near La Haye-Sainte. Horses scream as bayonets punch through breastplates and into bellies. Riders fire pistols point blank into the faces of men who refuse to flinch. A horse rears, falls backward, crushes its own rider. Another leaps clean over the front rank of a square and lands inside, instantly bayoneted by 20 men at once. The air fills with the stench of burnt powder, horse blood, and torn entrails. 4:17 p.m. Lord Uxbridge, commander of the Allied cavalry, one arm already in a sling from yesterday, sees the French massing for a second charge. He turns to Wellington. "By God, sir, that was hot work. Shall I take the household brigade down?" Wellington's reply is ice. "No. Wait until they come again. Then we will give them the counterstroke." 4:30 p.m. They come again. Ney has thrown in everything now, nearly 9,000 sabres in one colossal mass. The ridge disappears under a sea of plunging horses and flashing steel. This time the French reach the very crest behind the squares. A cuirassier officer, Lieutenant Colonel de la Nougarede, actually cuts down the king's colour of the 40th Foot and tries to carry it off. He is shot through the mouth for his trouble. Inside the square of the 28th Gloucestershire, Ensign Charles Ewart, 19 years old, 6'4" in his stockings, sees the eagle of the French 45th Ligne coming straight at him. He steps out of the ranks, parries a lance thrust, and hacks the eagle-bearer's head clean off. The gilded eagle falls into the mud. Ewart picks it up, kisses it once, God knows why, and carries it back through a hail of carbine fire. The French cavalry are now leaderless in places. Generals fall one after another. Ney has 3 horses killed under him, rides the 4th bareback. Yet still they charge, again and again, like waves smashing against granite. 4:55 p.m. Wellington stands beside the battered elm tree at the crossroads, coat torn, face blackened. He looks at the carnage and says quietly, "God damn it, I think they mean to keep this up until nightfall." Then he sees the next wave forming. This time the Red Lancers of the Imperial Guard, the dreaded Red Devils who have never been beaten. He turns to Sir John Colborne of the 52nd Light Infantry and gives the order that will win the battle. "Colborne, advance your regiment, drive them back." At that exact moment, far to the east, a Prussian Ulan patrol crests a distant rise. Black uniforms, death's head pennants. They see the battlefield for the first time. Blücher's men have arrived, but no one on the Allied ridge notices yet. The French cavalry are forming for one last insane charge, straight at the British Guard Brigade around the colours of the 1st Foot Guards, later the Grenadier Guards. And in the centre of that brigade stands a 29-year-old lieutenant colonel named Henry Percy, holding the regimental colour in one hand and a broken sword in the other. He looks at the wall of lances coming toward him and says, loud enough for the front rank to hear, "Now, gentlemen, let us give them 3 cheers and die like Englishmen." The lancers lower their points. The earth itself seems to hold its breath.
7:30 p.m. The sun is low, a dull copper coin behind the smoke. The battlefield looks like the mouth of hell. Bodies piled 3 deep in places, horses screaming with their entrails dragging, the rye fields beaten into a bloody paste that sucks at every boot. Napoleon has watched his cavalry die for 3 hours. Ney is on foot now, his 5th horse shot, face black with powder, eyes wild, still shouting, "Come and see how a Marshal of France dies," as he tries to rally shattered squadrons that no longer exist. The Emperor stands on the same knoll behind Russomme, motionless, hands clasped behind his back. His face is the color of tallow. Around him the old guard, 10 battalions of the finest infantry who ever marched, wait in perfect silence, bearskins silhouetted against the dying light. He has kept them back all day. His last, unbreakable reserve. The men who growled, "The old guard dies but does not surrender," at Eylau, when the Russians were 20 yards away. Now he turns to General Drouot, commander of the Guard Artillery, and speaks so quietly that only a few hear him. C'est le commencement de la fin. Then louder, the old voice cracking like a whip, "La garde au feu! En avant!" The drums roll the famous pas de charge once more. 5 battalions of the Middle Guard, 3,500 men, start forward down the slope in 2 massive columns. The 1st and 2nd battalions of the 1st Grenadiers à Pied, the elite of the elite, on the left, the 1st and 2nd Chasseurs on the right. Behind them, the remaining battalions of the Old Guard stand ready to exploit the breakthrough that must come. They march with that terrible measured step, 120 paces a minute, bearskins nodding, muskets at the shoulder, eagles catching the last light like flames. Across the valley, Wellington sees them start. He has been waiting for this moment since dawn. He lifts his hat and waves it twice, the signal every man on the ridge has been praying for. From the hollow behind the ridge, Maitland's brigade of British foot guards, 1,200 men who have lain flat under cannon fire all day, suddenly stand up as one. Colonel Sir John Colborne has already wheeled the 52nd Oxfordshire Light Infantry, 1,000 bayonets, into a 4-deep line on the French left flank, the longest unbroken line of muskets ever formed on a Napoleonic battlefield. 7:42 p.m. The middle guard reach the foot of the slope and begin to climb toward the Allied center. 200 yards, 150. At 50 yards, the British guards rise like red ghosts from the earth. Maitland's voice rings out, "Up, guards, and at them!" A single volley, 1,200 muskets fired as one, tears the head off the left-hand French column. The chasseurs stagger, try to deploy from column into line, and are hit again by the 95th Rifles on their flank. On the French left, Colborne's 52nd delivers a crashing oblique fire straight into the flank of the Grenadiers. 700 muskets, then another 700, then another. The Grenadiers have never been flanked in 20 years of war. They reel, try to face both ways at once, and begin to disintegrate. The cry starts somewhere in the French ranks, just 2 words, but they travel faster than any cannonball. La garde recule. The guard is retreating. You can feel it now, the exact moment the spell breaks. French soldiers who have marched 1,000 miles hear those words and suddenly remember they are mortal. The retreat becomes a panic. The panic becomes a rout. 7:48 p.m. Napoleon sees the bearskins going backward. For the first time in his life, he has no orders left. He simply stands, mouth open, as the army he rebuilt in 20 days begins to dissolve in front of him. A staff officer grabs his bridle and drags him back toward the old guard squares that still stand like islands in a Red Sea. Behind them, the Prussians have finally broken through at Plancenoit. Black-coated infantry with skulls on their shakos pour into the French rear, bayoneting Bonners, capturing the Emperor's personal carriage. Wellington seizes the moment. He lifts his hat and waves it high on his sword, and the entire Allied line surges after him. The greatest counterattack in military history is about to sweep the French from the field. And Napoleon, the man who once said, "From the sublime to the ridiculous is but one step," is about to take that step.
8:15 p.m. The Allied line surges forward like a single red wave. For the first time all day, British, Dutch, German, and Brunswick soldiers are advancing, not holding. They come over the crest in one unbroken roar, bayonets leveled, colors flying, drums beating the old grenadiers' march that has chased the French across half of Europe. Behind them, the setting sun turns the smoke into a wall of blood and gold. On the French side, the army is no longer an army. It is a mob of terrified men running for their lives. Whole battalions throw down muskets and packs to run faster. Officers try to rally them and are trampled. The road to Genappe is already choked with abandoned guns, caissons overturned, and screaming wounded. Only one small knot still stands. 5 battalions of the Old Guard, fewer than 2,000 men now, have formed a chain of 3 squares on the gentle rise south of La Belle Alliance. They're the last French soldiers on the field who remember how to die in formation.
Napoleon is in the center square of the 1st Grenadiers of Pied. He is on foot. His horse has been taken from him by his own officers to prevent him riding forward to die. He stands among the bearskins, coat unbuttoned, hat gone, gray hair plastered to his skull, and for the first time in 30 years he is crying, not from fear, but from pure, savage grief. 8:22 p.m. The first Allied skirmishers reach the squares. They are met by a volley so perfect it sounds like a single gunshot. Hundreds fall. The rest hesitate. Then the 52nd Light Infantry and the 71st Highlanders come up on the left, the Prussian 15th Regiment on the right, and the last British Guards in the center. A ring of fire closes around the French squares. You can almost taste the powder now, feel the heat of the muskets, hear the terrible calm of the old guard as they reload with mechanical precision while men die all around them. A British major rides forward under a white handkerchief and shouts in French, "Brave Frenchmen, surrender! You have done enough for honor." From inside the square comes the answer. Legend says it was General Pierre Cambronne, commander of the last battalion. La garde meurt et ne se rend pas. The guard dies and does not surrender. Then, more famously and more accurately, Cambronne's real reply, Merde. 8:30 p.m. The final volley. The Allied infantry rush the squares with the bayonet. The bearskins go down in windrows. Men who have marched from Madrid to Moscow are bayoneted in the mud of Belgium. Napoleon is seized by his own grenadiers. 4 of them lift him bodily and carry him backward through the rear face of the square, while the front and flanks die to buy him minutes. He is screaming now, hoarse, broken sounds that no one has ever heard from him before. "No, no, let me die here!" But the old guard will not let their emperor die like a common soldier. They shove him into a closed carriage that has somehow survived the rout, slam the door, and the driver whips the horses toward Chalaras. 8:37 p.m. The last square of the old guard is annihilated. The only French soldiers still fighting are a handful of gunners around a single battery near Rossomme who keep firing until they are ridden down by Prussian Uhlans. 8:45 p.m. Wellington and Blücher meet in the rain of sparks and falling darkness at La Belle Alliance Tavern. The old Prussian, wrapped in his filthy blanket, smelling of gin and blood, seizes Wellington's hand and kisses it. "It's over," Wellington says simply. His voice is flat with exhaustion. He has lost a third of his army. He will not sleep for 48 hours, and when he finally does, he will wake screaming the names of dead friends. Across the field, the groans of 45,000 wounded men begin to rise like a tide. The moon comes up red over Waterloo. And somewhere, on the road south, a closed carriage rattles through the night carrying a man who once owned the world, and now owns nothing, not even his own sword. Midnight, 1819 June, 1815. The battlefield is quiet now, except for the sounds no one ever puts in the victory bulletins. A low, continuous moaning rises from 50,000 broken bodies, French, British, Prussian, Dutch, tangled together in the mud. Lanterns flicker as the first scavenging parties move among them. A Highland sergeant finds a 14-year-old French drummer boy still clutching his drum. The boy's legs are gone below the knees. The sergeant gives him water from his canteen and says, "It's all right, son. It's done." The boy dies anyway. At 2 a.m., the rain returns, gentle, almost merciful. It washes blood into the little streams that feed the Seine. By dawn, the water will run red all the way to Brussels. 4:30 a.m., 19 June. Napoleon's carriage reaches Charleroi. He has not spoken for hours. His face in the lantern light is collapsed, the skin hanging in folds, the eyes dead. When the door opens, he almost falls out. General Gourgaud catches him and hears the first words the Emperor has uttered since La Belle Alliance. Tout est perdu, même l'honneur. Everything is lost, even honor. He sleeps 3 hours on a kitchen table in a peasant cottage, fully dressed, boots still caked with Waterloo mud. When he wakes, he asks for coffee, drinks half a cup, then vomits blood. 20 June, Philippeville. He dictates orders that no longer matter, orders to Grouchy, to Davout, to the National Guard that has already melted away. Every courier brings the same news. The Prussians are across the Sambre. Wellington is at Nivelles. The road to Paris is open. At 2 o'clock, the climbs back into the carriage. The driver has to take side roads because the main highways are choked with the wreckage of the Grande Armée, abandoned eagles, shattered gun carriages, deserters begging for bread. Old Guard grenadiers with bandaged heads salute the carriage as it passes. Some of them are crying. 22nd June, 1815, 4 a.m. Paris, Elysium Palace. The Emperor slips into Paris like a thief. The city already knows. The boulevards are unnaturally quiet. A few royalist cockades appear overnight. When Napoleon walks into the palace, the sentries of the National Guard present arms slowly, reluctantly. He goes straight to the bath chamber. Servants peel away the mud-stiffed uniform, the same gray overcoat he wore on the knoll at Waterloo. Underneath, the white breeches are soaked in blood from hemorrhoids burst by 14 hours in the saddle. He sits in the steaming water and stares at nothing. At 7 a.m., he summons his ministers. The Chamber of Deputies is in permanent session. Lafayette, old, implacable, has already declared that France will accept Napoleon again only if he agrees to a constitutional monarchy. Fouché, the police minister who has betrayed every regime since 1789, is negotiating secretly with the Bourbonas and the Allies. Napoleon still believes he can raise another army. He speaks of 300,000 men, of national uprising, of one more campaign. But when he steps onto the balcony to show himself to the people, only a handful of curious onlookers gather. No cheers, no Vive l'Empereur. Just silence, and the distant sound of a military band playing royalist tunes across the river. That afternoon, he dictates his second abdication. Short, almost curt. Frenchmen, in commencing war for national independence, I counted on the union of all efforts. I had reason to hope for success. Circumstances appear to have changed. I offer myself as a sacrifice to the hatred of the enemies of France. He signs it Napoleon, no longer Emperor. Then he walks alone into the garden, stands under the chestnut trees, and for a long time watches the sun set over a city that no longer belongs to him. 22nd June, 10 p.m. Malmaison. He spends his last night on French soil in Josephine's old house. She has been dead 14 months, but her perfume still lingers in the curtains. He wanders the empty rooms touching her furniture, her harpsichord, the little Egyptian souvenirs from the 1798 campaign. At midnight, he sits at her writing desk and pens a final letter to Marie-Louise, who will never answer. Then he burns most of his papers in the fireplace. The flames light his face one last time, the face that once made kings tremble. Outside, 4 commissioners appointed by the provisional government wait to escort him to Rockfort and the ship that will carry him across the Atlantic. Or so he still believes. Somewhere in the darkness, a night bird calls once, like a warning. The 100 days are over. The age of Napoleon is ending exactly where it began, in exile, on an island, staring at the sea.
The 15th of July, 1815, 5:30 a.m. Rochefort Roads. The French frigate Salle lies at anchor, tricolor still flying. Napoleon stands on the quarterdeck in a plain green coat, no decorations, watching the British blockade through a spyglass. 2 ships of the line, HMS Bellerophon and HMS Superbe, sit across the harbor mouth like patient jailers. Captain Maitland of the Bellerophon has sent a polite note. Any attempt to sail will be met with broadsides. For 3 days Napoleon has negotiated, bargained, threatened, cajoled. He has offered to go to America, to England as a private citizen, even to live quietly in a cottage on some English estate. Every answer is the same. His Majesty's government will decide his fate. At dawn, on the 15th, he makes the decision himself. He walks down the accommodation ladder into a small boat, stands erect while the oars dip, and is rowed across to the Bellerophon. The British sailors line the rails in silence. No cheers, no jeers. Only the boatswain's pipe as he steps aboard. Maitland salutes and says in careful French, "You are very welcome aboard His Britannic Majesty's ship, sir." Napoleon removes his hat, looks around at the scrubbed decks and disciplined faces, and answers in perfect English, "I come to place myself under the protection of your laws and of your prince." He does not yet understand that Britain has no intention of letting him anywhere near her laws. 10th of August, 1815, Torbay, England. The Bellerophon anchors off Devon. For 6 days, thousands come in small boats to stare at the ogre in the flesh. He appears on deck each morning at 11, walks the poop, bows gravely to the ladies who wave handkerchiefs. Children are lifted up to see Boney. He smiles the old public smile, but his eyes are empty. Then the Northumberland arrives. 74 guns, black hull, destination classified. On 7th of August, they read him the government's sentence. He is to be detained on the island of St. Helena. No trial, no appeal, for the rest of his life. He listens without expression. Only once does he speak. St. Helena is a very small island. 8th of August, 1815, at sea. The Northumberland sails with a squadron. Napoleon stands on the quarterdeck as England fades astern. He watches until the last white cliff disappears, then turns away and never looks back. The voyage lasts 71 days. He spends them dictating memoirs to Lacasse, Bertrand, and Montholon, 3 loyal companions who have chosen exile with him. He teaches the midshipmen chess, argues with the ship's surgeon about medicine, and every evening walks the poop alone while the equatorial stars wheel overhead. At night, he sometimes wakes screaming from dreams of Russia, of the retreat from Moscow, of snow and fire and the Berezina. 15th of October, 1815, Jamestown anchorage, St. Helena. The island rises out of the South Atlantic like a black fortress. 2,000 miles from anywhere, sheer cliffs, one narrow harbor guarded by British batteries.
The first thing Napoleon sees is the Union Jack, flying over the only road up from the sea. They lower him into a barge. As it nears the wharf, he stands, coat flapping in the trade wind, and looks up at the volcanic walls that will be his horizon until he dies. A company of the 53rd Regiment presents arms. The governor, Sir Hudson Lowe, a thin, nervous man with a martyr's face, steps forward and salutes stiffly. Napoleon returns the salute with perfect military correctness, then says in a voice that carries to every sailor and marine on the quay, "I do not even a prison, Sir Hudson, a tomb." That night, he is taken to Longwood House, an old farmhouse battered by wind and rats, 1,700 feet above the sea, wrapped in perpetual damp cloud. He walks through the empty rooms, touches the peeling wallpaper, stands at the window that looks out on nothing but ocean and sky. Then he does something no one has seen him do in 20 years. He sits down in a wooden chair, puts his head in his hands, and stays there until dawn. Outside, the trade wind moans across the barren plateau, carrying the faint sound of waves breaking on rocks 2,000 feet below. Somewhere in the darkness, a sentinel calls the hour. All is well. And far away in Europe, the kings are already dividing his empire, erasing his laws, burning his books, and telling their children that the nightmare is finally over. But on that wind-blasted plateau, in a house that smells of mildew and defeat, the nightmare is only just beginning its last, longest chapter. For Napoleon Bonaparte, conqueror of the world, the final battle has no drums, no eagles, no roaring guns. Only silence, and the slow, relentless ticking of a clock that will not stop until 5:49 p.m. on the 5th of May, 1821.